welcome to Shelf Examination Podcast, where we examine the items found on the shelves of our local library.
I'm Joe. I'm the Makerspace guy in southern Utah.
And I'm Sarah, the Hurricane Branch Library reference librarian and guru of crazy things.
We should call you queen of all things nerdy. The nerdy queen.
I'm white and nerdy.
So, Sarah, how you doing?
I've been crazy busy. Yes. Again.
So, I'm going to get a little meta here. In fact, we're going to get fairly meta at the beginning of this episode because, first of all, this is the second time we're recording this episode.
Take two.
Because some idiot forgot to hit record properly. Although I swear I thought I was doing record, but we can see now numbers are going. So, we are recording this time. We recorded the entire episode. And
it was dress rehearsal.
It was dress rehearsal, but I hate to say
you're dressed, I'm dressed, we're all dressed now.
So if this episode sounds a little bit less spontaneous than it's supposed to, it's because we're trying to recapture that moment. Yeah. I mean, I've got notes, so we'll do that.
Yeah.
But besides that, what you been up to?
I just recently got back. Well, recently being February. I went to a giant anime and entertainment convention in Washington, D.C., and I was one of the judges for the cosplay contest.
Now, I know you do fantastic cosplay.
Oh,
in fact, I've helped you with your cosplay.
You have.
Past. But what, because, Makerspace guy, if she needs 3D printing, I'm the guy. But what were you dressed as this time?
Let's see.
There's a question I didn't ask last time, so it can sound spontaneous because it is.
My cosplay name is Miss Relina. Oh, shameless plug.
Hey, by all means.
And so I was actually dressed as Relina Peacecraft from Gundam Wing.
Okay.
Which is
I don't know Gundam. I know of Gundam Wing, but I don't know Gundam Wing.
It's it's a 1995/1996 anime. It's part of the Gundam franchise, but it's an offshoot, so it's not the Universal Century, which is the main storyline. It's just kind of but I love it, and it was one of the first American mainstream anime as anime. It was on Toonami and all that jazz. Yeah. And then I also dressed, a group of friends of mine got together and we decided we wanted to do a Sailor Moon group, which would have been super easy for me because I already have a Sailor Mercury costume. But
that's the one that I helped you with.
It is. You helped me.
I made a phone case that looks like Sailor Mercury's mini computer.
And it fits my phone, so I can actually type on it and make cool things. But they decided to shake it up a bit, and with 3 weeks' notice, we decided to do Sailor Moon's the costumes for Sailor Moon's wedding sequence in the very last episode.
Oh, which they're all in white.
They're all in wedding dresses, which I guess is actually in Asia can be a thing. It is a thing.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that, but we were like, okay, so you have all of these.
Well, I mean, they've got their own cultural, traditional
but
wear,
it's their version of a Western. It's a tradition that they've created for a Western wedding, where all the girls get dressed up, all the bridesmaids or whatever get dressed up in wedding gowns too.
It's interesting to me how much. I mean, if we did that here, it would be called cultural appropriation. But when they do it, nobody blinks an eye, and honestly, neither do I. I'm like, hey, that's their take. They're making an absolutely beautiful take on it.
It was way fun. We had a great time. So you have all these brides with brightly colored hair. I had short blue hair, which was fun, because my hair is normally down to my waist. So it was great watching people.
You had it curled up underneath there or something?
Oh, I had pin curls and braids and the whole night. People were like, how does that get up there? I'm like, practice and time. But it was a super fun thing. We had 100 entries, and some of them blew my mind.
That is pretty darn cool.
That was fun. Just did a library conference for teens and young adult and children last weekend. So it's been a race.
Well, I'm glad things have calmed down. Actually, I've been super busy as well. As of the time of recording, I have finally edited and published the first 2 episodes of Shelf Examination on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. We are now online. Now, we are several episodes in as far as recording goes.
Yes.
But that was intentional. Part of the reason
Give a little buffer so you have time to edit.
There's the buffer to edit, but there's parts of making a podcast. And this whole exercise has been an exercise for me as a librarian to be able to help people make a podcast of their own, and
because one of our branches, the Washington City branch, actually has, for their makerspace, they have an audio video recording studio.
Yes.
And it's amazing, but
And it's absolutely
we realize
beautiful.
that
We are not recording in it.
No,
but
we are not. I wish we could, but because we have to leave that open for the patrons, could be the nice people.
Well, I suppose we could do it. It's just mostly I've come to your branch to do it because I live right down the street. And I have a personal recording set up as well that will travel
but
around.
It helps
but
us
if you
learn
want,
with
we
the
could
editing.
start doing it in Washington.
No, this is fine. But this gives us experience with the editing and helping people get started with podcasts.
And I'll tell you what, the publishing process. So, again, there were parts of this process that I was like, I want to explore fully. And recording and editing was one part of that process. But also there's the scheduling. There's getting another person in the same room as you to talk about something. That is a pain in the neck.
Yep.
And I wanted to know that it would be sustainable before we went on and did this. Now, I suspect a lot of people are just going to do solo podcasts, just one voice on there, which is fine. But I wanted to have a contrasting voice on here, so that's why I called you in.
With my high squeaky voice.
Yes, as opposed to my deep, low voice. Plus, I just figured you'd be into it.
Well, yeah, I love geeky, nerdy.
Absolutely. And so you were a great choice for it. But now that I know that we're going, I'm like, okay, let's find out what publishing is like. Holy smoke. Okay, the worst part about publishing, and I don't want to give away too much because I do want to have another episode where we review the process of making a podcast
That
at the
sounds
end
great,
of this
yeah.
all. But anything with the word apple on it is now my bane. I am so mad. I have spent all day having Apple tell me, no, you can't do that.
Upload.
Why? Not even upload. Just set up a freaking account. Please, just let me set up the account.
It's like me standing
can't
over
set
a
up
printer going, please print!
Yeah, we cannot set up your account at this time.
Why not?
Well, when can you? I'll meet you at the... Oh, you're fault. So, yeah. So, it's finally done. It's all set up, and we are publishing. So, if people are actually listening to this, which I would be surprised. Now that it's up, I need to start promoting it.
Yes.
And we need to promote it within the library, but I want to promote it to a wider audience because while this being the most popular podcast out there is not necessarily a part of exactly, it's not the goal, it's not a part of the process that we're doing.
It would be fun.
It would be cool.
We would love to hear people's feedback.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear, and also I'd love to hear if this has inspired people to go back and rewatch some of these movies. Now,
or go to your local library and make a podcast of your own.
Absolutely. And also, what do you guys want us to review in the future? Because we're going to run out of kaiju movies sooner rather than later because we are not doing it's not an exhaustive list.
No, we really want to focus on the ones that we can find in local libraries in this area. Now, so we've had to expand a little bit. We went to a different county.
Yes.
And then we had to go down to Vegas.
But I don't think we're going to do much more of that.
No.
I think that we did a little bit of that.
We had to get those movies that set up the background of the monsters that are going to reappear again and again.
Except that we're not doing that this time. Okay, I feel like I've been avoiding talking about this movie. and I'll tell you what, I have been avoiding talking about this movie because I didn't love this movie.
There was, like we say, we have the A movie, which is the monsters, the A story.
The A story
and
the
B story, which are the people.
And this movie
had too much B story, and we didn't like anyone.
All B story. Yeah, well, I hold on. I wouldn't say that I didn't like anyone. Although, no, you know what? No, I'm not sure I did.
It's like watching
The
Prestige.
We had Mr. Handsome.
Yes.
And then we had the pretty girl.
Of course.
And he did not treat her very nice. He was jerk
heinous
to her. She was...
I was like, dump the dude,
Yeah, no kidding. Well, and she's like, oh, I want to take these beautiful pictures and stuff like that. And he's like...
Get out of the way.
Yeah, this is not important. Even though she finds something that leads them to something. I wasn't sure what the pearl plate was that she found.
Yeah. Like, look, I found something worthwhile. Moving on.
Yeah,
okay.
it never really played into
it. It's like I said just a minute ago. It's like watching the movie The Prestige. Now, don't get me wrong. I like Christian Bale and I love Hugh Jackman.
Great cast.
I
and
didn't like anyone in that movie except David Bowie. And first of all, he played Tesla, but he was David Bowie.
Yeah.
And who doesn't love David Bowie?
That's a 1-2 punch right there,
But
David Bowie playing Tesla?
Yes, please. And we're not talking about the cars, people. Don't send us hate mail. So
Yeah, no, the Prestige
you
had...
didn't like any of the main characters.
Which was
you
kind of the
leave
point
and
of
you're
that
like,
movie. The point of
ew.
that movie was that they were all so... It was to show the dark side and the lies and whatnot, and how this ruins their lives and stuff like that. And so, yeah, you don't
had a movie
expect to...
similar like that, similar in type that came out almost at the same time. The Illusionist.
The Illusionist, yeah, you're right. But the point of The Illusionist was a love story. And this one was a hate story. But The Prestige was a hate story.
But there was
The
nothing
Illusionist was a love story.
redeeming about Prestige.
No.
As far as the characters.
I agree with you.
Now, the acting was phenomenal. That was redeeming. But I
acting
mean,
was-
the characters themselves.
And not to spoil it if you haven't watched The Prestige, although how long's that movie been out?
It's been a while. Spoilers are okay.
I feel like the statute of limitations is up. But if you haven't watched it, the twist in that movie is
It's
really
out of nowhere.
something else.
Yeah, it was really
Yeah.
cool. But at the same point, it was like, I hate everyone.
In fact, I would say that
I
that
couldn't
the Prestige,
cheer for anyone.
I would say that The Prestige had at least 2 twists, and the first twist was almost a distraction from the second twist.
Yeah, it was a red herring.
It was a red herring, and the second twist they broadcast throughout the whole movie, and when it showed up, you're like, "Oh, I know what's happening," because they've been telling me what's happening this whole time with the canaries.
The whole M. Night Shyamalan, oh, he really is dead kind of thing.
Yeah. No, it was a really... It was a good movie, but it was a hard movie to like anybody in. And this movie, Mothra versus Godzilla...
I liked the monster, Mothra, far better than I liked the people.
And I like the fairy girls.
Oh, yes.
I love the fairy girls. Now,
they were quirky, and we haven't seen the original Mothra, so I don't know how they go into the lore. But at first I was like, huh?
Yeah, when they showed up and everybody was like, oh, there are tiny people and we are willing to accept this at face value, I was like, what the... Why?
Yeah, I'm like, you're accepting it at face value, but you're not listening to what they're telling you.
Yeah, there's that. But then there's also the fact that they knew what island they were from.
Yep.
And they had all this information about them. And I'm like, did this get mentioned in a previous Godzilla movie that I didn't know? No, it was not a previous Godzilla movie.
Mothra had her own, and they did establish
movie.
that Mothra is female.
Yes, I love that. I love that this monster has a gender that they keep sticking to.
Well, and of course, one of the cruxes of the movie is Mothra's eggs.
That's true.
And it wouldn't make sense.
Although, where's the Dathra?
Dathra. I love how creative they are. Mothra is a giant moth, so let's name it Mothra. Yeah. Mothra.
Hey, listen, I can't criticize. I'm not very good at naming things myself. In fact, the name of this podcast I didn't come up with. You came up with. And I tell you what, I love it. I can't help bragging about how good a name that was, because when I was looking for names, I could not come up with Shelf Examination. You did so good. But yeah, so so there was a previous Mothra movie, and it established Mothra as a character. It established the fairy girls. It established a lot of information, and so this is another crossover movie.
Yeah, they decided to go this way because Godzilla vs. King Kong was popular in Japan, and so they wanted to try another crossover. And then Mothra, in her own movie, did really well as well. So they thought, well, let's see what happens when we combine these two.
And I can't help but wonder, and again, I haven't seen it, so maybe after we watch Mothra, but we're probably not going to review other than maybe a footnote in the next episode if we
don't have
watch
it available. It's kind of tough
we don't
to
have
find
it available.
In physical copy. You can buy it on Amazon. You can watch it on Amazon Prime. But as far as libraries are concerned,
it's apparently hard to get a copy of it.
It's apparently hard to get a hold of.
But regardless, I'm curious if in watching Mothra, it will become clear that there was intent to do it in the same universe as Godzilla. And again, we're talking about a movie that was made in the 60s. So they probably weren't thinking about universes at the time.
At that point, no.
But the fact that it crossed over so well means
it was beautiful.
Either means that it was well planned, or that
they were lucky.
Well, not just lucky, but that the elements that were a part of her story about the island being decimated by bomb testing and about it destroying life and stuff like that is so universal to the Japanese psyche at the time that it couldn't help but cross over well.
Especially because they had already, in the original Godzilla, they had created the tie that Godzilla represents. the atomic bomb.
The fallout from the atomic bomb, the result of knowing that there is a bomb. Again, we discussed it. He's not the bomb.
He's not the bomb. It is the fact.
But he's the monster that follows the bomb.
The bomb. Yes, exactly. So, and they kind of bring that back, the idea of this desolation, this absolute destruction that is caused by the bomb, and how slowly things are to recover because of Mothra's. You can see it in Mothra's Island, where half of it is still total wasteland.
Well, there's this one oasis of beauty that the fairy girls are singing in, which I found out that the fairy girls did a little bit of research on this. They are twins. They are singers, and they sing in unison to the point where their voices sound like one voice.
Yeah, they were considered treasures at that time.
Yeah, so it was exciting to see them get this part, and they were. We didn't talk about this at the beginning of this recording, but I watched the subtitled version,
and I watched the horrible original U.S. dub. There's now a better U.S. dub out there, but I watched the 1960s one, which actually was condensed. They had chopped scenes out, and I don't think there was anything that they were like, oh, Americans won't understand it. I think it was for running time.
Possibly.
So I remember when I was like 8, and I saw the subtitled ones with the horrible subtitles, no lit flap matching or anything like that. But I remember seeing
subs
that.
Or dubs? When you watch it as a kid?
When I watched it as a kid, it was subbed. So, but it was like you have a 2-word sentence that they're speaking, and the sentence across the bottom is like 12 miles long.
Yeah.
But there were scenes in that I remembered, and then I'm like, wait, where'd it go?
Okay.
Where'd it go?
I'm curious what scenes those were, because I probably saw them, but I don't know, because I didn't not see them.
Yeah, you didn't know that they'd been cut.
I didn't know that they had been cut. But they were a delight. But they were sitting in this beautiful oasis, singing and drawing them. That was an interesting scene. The scene before it, because they're sitting there arguing with the chief and being like, we would like to have Mothra's help. No, you can't have Mothra's help.
They kept
Girls
coming
singing,
back.
let's wander off in the middle of our conversation with the chief. Because he's not, I don't even know.
And I thought it was really interesting that I think it was they're trying to make a metaphor for Mothra as a symbol of peace and a symbol of
returning to nature.
Yeah, the good side of nature rather than, Godzilla nature strikes back sort of idea.
Yeah.
Because they kept going back to Mothra and asking for more. Although they never did give Mothra's egg back. It's like, we want you to do more, we want you to do more.
They didn't get Mothra's egg back, it's true. However, Mothra's children did return to the island, so balance was ultimately restored.
Yeah, but they did it on their own recognizances. It had nothing to do with the humans.
No, the humans in this movie were just about worthless. Well, let's talk about why I really did not like this movie. So we've got 2 characters in this movie. We've got the money man and we got the front man. And
they're abhorrent.
They are abhorrent human beings. And in fact, there's some things that happen in this movie that really made me question, because at one point...
and the best part is they represent Happy Incorporated.
Right. The irony of a bad name.
HAPPY.
So the one of them wants... At one point, they open up the case and they show the 2 fairy girls and they consult with each other. And he turns around and offers them 5 million yen.
5 million yen, I think it was actually dollars. Well, the version I saw, it was dollars. But
yeah. But anyways, some exorbitant amount of exorbitant amount of. That's what I get for using $20 words. Sometimes you mess up.
Comes out as a $2.50.
So they offer this ludicrous amount of money to buy the 2 girls. And then the very next scene that we see them
he says, I don't have the money for this.
Yeah, the front man is going, hey, I need more money because this investment of ours is going to fall apart. And the money man is like, oh, well, it's your money too. So, you better put some more into it or it's not going to work. I was like, why were you offering $1 billion for the girls? Where was that money? And then sure enough, and this is the scene, the front man gets tired of being bullied around. He goes to the office of the money man, and he opens up a case that is full of money.
Full of money.
Like, why?
Why are you saying we don't have the cash when obviously
why are you saying
have
I'm
the
not going
cash?
to put forth the cash when you got the cash, when you know that your investment is going to fail? If like it's
There were some
behavior
other
that
details.
doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
it doesn't. And you know, they both
And maybe
end up
it's
dead, but
well, and maybe it was trying to make the whole point of I want to spend your money, not my
Mine,
money,
yes.
like actually happens in the real world. But then what follows in that scene is they get into this knockdown, drag out,
bloody
fight.
fight.
And it was when it started getting bloody.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, this is at the end of a movie that has had very little Godzilla up to
Yeah,
this
it
point.
was like,
It had
okay.
one scene of Godzilla, and we will go back and talk about that scene because
Yeah.
it was not bad. But it's been all B story
Yeah.
this whole time, and I'm getting tired of the B story. And then it ends with one of them getting super bloodied up, and then the other one getting shot.
Yeah, one of them shoots the other, then he grabs the money, runs out the door, and gets stepped on by Godzilla.
Yes, which, okay, got his comeuppance.
So
But
as an
that-
8-year-old kid, I was like, dude, he got stepped on by the monster. Yeah, sucks to be you. But now you're like, wait.
As an adult, that scene just made me feel ick.
Yeah.
And it made me feel ick enough that
There
it
was
kind
no
of,
growth. There was no moving forward. There was no
No.
point
and
in the end.
well, and it, again, maybe I'm just averse to blood, but it was so graphic.
It was surprisingly
It
graphic.
was surprisingly graphic. And I mean, again, this is a movie where we have monsters destroying big cities,
Buildings
so
with-
we assume that people are getting
Yeah, I mean, you
destroyed,
have
but we don't
collateral
see
damage,
it.
as heartless as it is to say that.
Yeah.
Like when Godzilla trips.
But it's what the movie chooses to focus on. Going
And
back
there was
to
a
the
major focus on all that blood.
It was, but it's like going back to the original Godzilla. What kind of dropped that in the rankings for me is the scene where the mother's holding on to her children and saying, "We're going to be with your father soon." Like, that made my heart drop. I was like, I can't enjoy this movie now. That hurts.
You hit me in the feels. How
Yeah,
dare.
not even into good feels. Come on. So yeah, this movie, that scene kind of ruined this whole movie for me, added to the fact that there wasn't enough monster in this monster
the
movie.
comeuppance was kind of anticlimactic.
Well,
And Mr. Handsome and Miss Beautiful were kind of not involved in any of that.
Well, and they also weren't involved in each other. They were
No.
just kind of not.
They were
he
the
was mean
token
to
character.
her.
Oh, he was horrible. I
Yeah.
was like, dump the dude.
Yeah, no, it was not great. I did not enjoy their relationship.
Yeah.
I did not enjoy these bad guys, and even him getting his comeuppance in the end.
It was very
didn't feel good.
anticlimactic. Yeah.
So overall, that was the scene I think where I was
You were
done
done.
with this movie, which is a shame because right after that, it really picks up
yeah,
when we get the monster fight that we've been
holy
waiting
smokes.
for.
And the improvement in the monster suits.
Yes.
It was like Final Fantasy VII, the original Final Fantasy VII with the Lego people, to
Yes.
Final Fantasy VIII, where they actually moved and resembled people, which is too bad because Final Fantasy VIII is not as popular as it deserves to be.
I have seen people talking about cosplay. I've seen people cosplaying the Final Fantasy VII characters with,
As Lego people.
as
Yes,
Lego
me
people.
too. I
It's
love
absolutely glorious.
But it was that kind of improvement. Now, I'm not going to say we're up to like Final Fantasy 15 or whatever
but-
yet, but we've made it to 8.
Well, the very first scene that we see Godzilla,
It's his tail.
it's his tail
and
popping
it
up
is
out of the
super
sound.
articulated.
I don't think we've seen a tail this articulated in Godzilla
It was
before. It
amazing.
was to the point that I was like, "Oh, are we going to have a giant worm in this?" And then Godzilla
No. There's
pops up,
teeth
and
on
I'm
the
like,
other end.
"Oh, we were looking at the wrong side." Okay, fair enough.
No, it was amazing. And actually, that was all new suits except for the underwater scene.
Mm-hmm.
The underwater scene, they got out the Godzilla Raids Again suit because the new suits, the water and those
They
new
didn't
suits,
waterproof the new
they
suits.
didn't mesh well.
Oh,
so,
no.
But the other one was so rubber, it was fine. But these suits were on fire.
Yes, there was a pyro scene during the fight where they lit the suit on fire, and it wasn't fake fire. It wasn't like
No. He was burning.
Yeah, it wasn't
And I wanna
CG
put
fire.
that.
This
I want to
was real.
put that on my resume. I was the Godzilla that was on fire.
I was Pyro Godzilla.
So I mean,
Oh,
it was the same
good.
actor for most of the times in that
In
era.
fact,
that was Godzilla.
Not just in that era. I think he was the guy in the suit until like 1990 something.
Yeah, it was crazy.
He was Godzilla for
up
a
until
very long
Godzilla
time.
became computerized.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they went back. They go back and forth on the suitmation from time to time, but this was an amazing suit, and
Oh, it
the
was
movie,
cool.
like the
And
improvement of
Mothra, size comparison.
she must
She
have
was
been
huge
huge.
because she was the same size as a dude in a suit.
And she was so articulated.
Oh my
I don't know
gosh.
how the heck they
I
were
mean,
puppeting her.
we understand that, in real world physics, she could never actually fly with those slow, graceful wing flaps. It would not work, but it looked
never
so
mind the fact that
cool.
she would collapse under her own weight.
Weight.
We've got the cross-sectional inverse square law that's
Blah,
going to have a
blah.
problem with it. That's all right. We're not
This
looking
is
at
Hollywood
reality.
science.
This is fun, cool stuff. But even being a human-sized Mothra,
It's so cool.
it was very, very cool, and it was flying through the scene, and it was flapping its wings.
And the
there
cool
were
little
some things-
cry and
I think the scene where she's like doing her wind attack against Godzilla, which was comical. I'm pretty sure that they had some sort of Godzilla that they were puppeting with a stick off because you couldn't see the bottom half of her or something like that. There was enough off screen that I was like, okay, I can see how they're doing that. But usually, like, I don't know what they were doing, putting her on strings or stuff like that, but she was
the
in it.
articulation again, the articulation of the monsters has grossly improved.
Absolutely. They're getting better with every movie. And the film just looked better in this movie. It was a better looking
if
movie.
They used wires
Movie
with-
making has improved.
If they're using wires for Mothra, their wire foo was strong.
It was good. It was good.
So it was.
And
it was
then-
good. It was a step up in that way, but the human storytelling was definitely a step down.
And there wasn't enough of it. Like
There
30
wasn't enough.
minutes of monster
there wasn't
fighting
enough
was
monster.
not enough for this.
I'm like, why are these guys the headliners if you're only gonna put them in for that long?
Now, there was a scene maybe a little bit earlier where the humans are trying to stop Godzilla, and their method of stopping him is electricity. Because that worked in the past.
Yes.
Right? And so they set up these
Nets.
Before that they set up this huge like fence to try and stop him, which going back, remember they did the same thing in Godzilla versus King Kong, or King Kong versus Godzilla, and King Kong got a charge off of it, but Godzilla it damaged him.
Yeah, which is why they're like, okay, this worked before, let's try it again.
Exactly. And then to increase conductivity, they drape him with nets, like you said. Now,
And they created
a Faraday cage, right?
Faraday cage.
Right? Am I the only one who's looking at this and going, did you
Wait a
actually
minute.
like work against yourself there? And then they top it off with a second layer of
I
net
know,
on
and I'm
there.
like, okay, now it's even better Faraday cage, and especially when it grounded.
Yes,
I'm
once
like-
he fell down and it was grounded,
It was no longer
they
doing
should
anything
have
to him.
completely been able to. And again, we are talking about a movie where giant monsters should not be able to exist because of the inverse square law, the cross section of the mass of the. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
But Faraday cage is still Faraday cage. The
yeah,
net
yeah,
would not make
these
him
have
more
been
conductive.
established even in the 1960s.
Like spray him with
seawater or something.
When did Faraday do his thing? I don't know. Maybe they haven't figured that out yet. But yeah, hit him with seawater. Just pump him. Get
And
his
then
conductivity
zap
up.
him.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not like there's a shortage out there.
Maybe they had built those nets with little spikes on the inside, so
Right,
that
right.
maybe that would
into
shock him more. But
they did not.
I don't know. Would that actually shock him more, or would
Who
that
knows?
just spread out the shock over more areas so they end up having like harmless amperage actually hitting him? I don't think the nets were helping, guys. That's my point.
That's a lot of wasted effort and metal.
That's a lot. That's a big honking nets, yeah. that would actually work against you.
them.
But
you
then
know, Hollywood science. That's
yeah,
what you go.
exactly. Oh well. But then the egg hatches. And Mothra's
No,
defeated.
and the whole thing
egg
about these
hatches,
eggs is
and it's-
everyone sees these little fairy girls and they just immediately accept, oh, they're these small little people from this island. You go to the island, there's no other small little people. And
Yeah,
they just
that was
accept
weird, right?
these girls, but nobody listens to what the girls keep saying. They're like, you don't want this egg to hatch. It will destroy everything around it. You don't want this egg to hatch. Put it back. You don't want this egg to
give
hatch.
it-
So
please.
instead they put
And
it in the middle of a shopping center.
They were so darn polite about it. They were like, please give us the egg back, when they should have been like, this is going to go extremely poorly
I mean,
for
I
you.
was waiting
Don't
for
be
them
dumb.
to go, you will rue the day, and then see much ruage happening.
they were
but
so
no, they were so
polite.
sweet. They're like,
They were so
really?
sweet.
We just want you to be
I mean,
safe.
I suppose,
Please put it back.
I suppose if your entire life was being small enough to be stepped on. They were fast too.
Oh man, they were.
When they didn't want to get
zippy
stepped
little
on,
gals.
they were somewhere else really fast. But yeah, if that was your entire life, I suppose you wouldn't be like rude and demanding on the usual. But they got a trump card here.
Yeah.
They're like, we know what's going to happen when this hatches, and you don't want none.
And nobody listened. They
Nobody
put it in the
listened.
middle of a brand new shopping center. Yay!
Yeah. And then the girls hatch, and it's
twins.
Yay! So
Lucky Mothra. Then out come these larvae that spit silly string.
Yeah, and Godzilla's got to fight two of them as they. Was it silly string? Was it hot glue? I don't know what they used.
But that's what it looked like.
Yeah, it was something all over him that was just covering him
like
with web after
webbing.
web after web after web, and eventually he was entirely covered in web.
And then he falls into the
rolls
sea
into the ocean,
again.
and once again, yes, water beats Godzilla, because that's how it worked in King Kong versus
both
Godzilla.
Both of those kind of gave me the idea of the Disney villain falling to his doom.
Yes.
You never actually see him land.
Except for in Tarzan. Holy,
Well, he
that was
doesn't.
a
You
scene.
don't see him land.
No, he doesn't land. Yeah, but you see his shadow with his dangling feet. That hit me as a kid, boy. That was
You
amazing.
should
But
read the book.
That's true. But no, yeah, you're right. It's one of those situations where we don't see the bad guy die.
We have to leave it open for a sequel.
We have to leave it open for a sequel. And of
so
course, they're
again,
going to leave
like
it open for a sequel.
Godzilla versus King Kong, we just assumed that he decided it was too much effort and swam away.
Which, yeah, that's got to be it. You know, he's like, this is just ridiculous. I'm done.
Enough with you.
I'm going to go somewhere else until you need me in the next movie. But yeah.
Which we don't have in our next movie. He's not in our next movie.
No, in fact, the next movie that we're going to be doing, not to get ahead of things, but we're going to watch Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, which establishes this character all by itself to be tied in later.
He becomes the big bad that is so bad, now Godzilla's the good guy.
Exactly, which gives us a least. Now, I will say in this movie, Mothra definitely has a personality.
Oh, yes.
She has a purpose. She has a reason for being. I don't think
because Mothra versus Godzilla was actually my first Godzilla movie. So I figured that, Mothra was just an OG. Mothra's always been there.
Yeah.
And then as I
found out there were a couple lead-in movies
and
without
then
Mothra.
I got to be like 12, 13 years old, and I saw the original Godzilla in its entirety.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh.
Where's Mothra?
Where's Mothra?
Yeah.
And my brother's like, duh, they haven't introduced him yet, because that's what big brothers do. And I was like,
that's what they're good
for. Okay.
As a big brother, I understand. So yeah, it's definitely a way to experience them, but these were definitely sequential movies.
Yeah.
And there is a sequential growth of story going on. And this isn't the only time that has happened. This isn't the first time that has happened. But I do think that it's interesting that this is like a shared cinematic universe where they brought them all together.
And like they did in Godzilla versus King Kong, they just assumed that everyone in the universe has seen King Kong. So they didn't go back and explain a lot about King Kong.
Well, in Godzilla versus King Kong, if I remember, they kind of redid the origin of King Kong
a little bit.
So it's not like Godzilla versus King Kong is a direct sequel to the original King Kong. They kind of rehashed it a little bit.
You don't see me nodding, but I'm nodding.
They super streamlined, they super sped run through that origin story because, like you say, everybody knew it at that point.
It's like the summary at the beginning of every anime episode.
Yeah.
Last time on Dragon Ball Z.
They kind of had to do because King Kong died in his movie.
Yes.
So they had to be like, yes, we're not bringing King Kong back. This is King Kong
Junior.
First, original.
Yes.
We're ignoring the first one. Yeah. First one happened in an alternate universe, and in this universe,
he's only Marvel dead.
Right, and that and this is before universes. They weren't talking about share or different universes.
This is not the MCU versus the DCU versus
or alternate universes or stuff like that. Yeah, they were just like, well, we need a Godzilla. Let's just do it again, but do it different.
Yeah,
cool.
Except they're like, oh, we killed Godzilla, but we didn't. But now he's back and now he's not.
I wonder if somebody has ever made a video about like the multiple timelines in the Godzilla universe and stuff like that. There's got to be somebody obsessing about it. I mean, if there isn't, it's going to be me eventually, I'm sure. But let's talk about ranking. Where do we put Mothra versus Godzilla on the
Ours
list?
are just a little bit different.
Right, let's review real fast. Both of us have King Kong 1933 at the top of the list.
Yes.
Hard to beat the king.
Yes.
I put King Kong versus Godzilla right underneath that, but you kept the original Godzilla right underneath that. And then I put Godzilla underneath that, and you put King Kong versus
we swapped those
Godzilla
two.
there. So we swapped those.
And then we
but
had
otherwise, we're
Rodan.
pretty much the same. We got Rodan after
And
that.
then
And
Godzilla raids again.
Godzilla raids again. So where's Mothra fit for you?
I didn't, because of the irredeemable quality. There are no redeemable qualities in most of the human characters, and I got really tired of the human story.
And there was just too much of it.
I liked it less than Rodan, but the quality, and Rodan had that super cool scene.
Rodan had that scene. This movie did
not
not have that
So
scene.
I want to put it.
Or it did, and it was the scene where they were getting bloody fighting each other, and I didn't like that
I didn't
scene.
appreciate that.
But it
No,
definitely stuck with me.
So I liked it less than Rodan, but because of the coolness of the suits and the way they did all the monsters and everything,
Yeah.
and the fact that he's going up against Mothra instead of going up against some random ankylosaurus, I want to put it before Godzilla raids again.
Okay, so this one was weird for me because, as we discussed last time, Rodan was a weird movie.
It was so weird.
If you're judging it on the first half, it would be below Godzilla Raids Again,
Right.
but judging it on the second half, it was above Godzilla Raids Again. And so I've got to figure out where Mothra fits in relation to this movie that I keep wanting to flip-flop. I think I'm going to put it in the same place, though.
Okay.
I think that it's going to be below Rodan. It's going to be above Godzilla Raids Again. Because, again, Godzilla Raids Again just felt like the direct-to-DVD sequel
Right.
to the original Godzilla, whereas this was good, but it didn't have that scene.
Yeah, there was never the scene.
But Mothra, I think, had
I love
more
Mothra.
personality.
Oh, yeah.
And I also think that she had more character than Rodan
Yes,
did.
she was actually a character much more than Rodan, or even at this point, Godzilla. Godzilla's just here. I'm here to make
but
your
if
life
it
messy.
weren't for that one scene
In Rodan.
in Mothra versus Godzilla,
okay.
if it weren't for the one scene of the two bad guys fighting each other
Bleh.
that made me feel so bad, I would put this above Rodan. But because of that scene, I'm knocking it down.
Well, and Rodan had that one uber cool scene.
yes.
It goes up on the coolness factor.
Yeah. Better character for Mothra, but yeah.
The human story, bleh.
The human story, bleh, too much of the human story, bleh, and it didn't have a cool scene like Rodan had. I hate to put it that low because this is. I did enjoy Mothra.
The monsters were awesome,
The
but there
monsters
wasn't
were-
enough of it to
there
make
wasn't
up
enough
for
of
the
it. So
bleh.
okay, I'm locking it in. Rodan, Mothra, Godzilla raids again on the bottom here.
Yep.
So that's fantastic.
Yep. Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I think that's it for this one, and we would like to invite you to do some shelf examination of your own at your local library.